All right, so 6:30, we'll call the meeting to order. Thank you very much. It's 6:30 on Flag Day, June 14, 2023. This is the Town of Barnstable Shellfish Committee meeting. I'll call it to order, and please note that tonight's meeting is recorded and broadcast on Channel 18 and in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20. I must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting and to please make their presence known. Anybody taping? No? Other than the Town of Barnstable? So, first order of business will be to approve the meeting minutes from April the 12th, 2023. Copy is here. I'll entertain a motion to approve them as presented.
I make a motion to approve minutes from April 12, 2023.
Can you speak up, Patricia? It's a big room, and the mic that Paula is recording with needs to pick you up.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from April 12, 2023.
Been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. Discussion. Any discussion about the April 12, 2023 minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None.
I abstain.
And you abstain?
Because I wasn't.
Okay. Then they are approved. Next order of business are my comments. My comments will be, there are 2 new members to our committee. Mr. Hendricks, Mr. Paul Hendricks, who is a native shellfish. What role does he have? Does he have wild?
He's a wild harvester, he's an aquaculturist, and he's also a tribal member.
So he's our new member, but he's not here tonight. And our other new member is Gloria Hurwitz, and she is a family rec permit holder. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next order of business, Natural Resources report. Amy, Charter Growing Area updates.
Yeah. So we didn't meet last month.
Excuse me, Amy. Welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Are you sure?
Yeah. We now have 2 new members, yourself and Gloria.
Hi.
So effective June 1st, we had the conditionally approved area in Lewis Bay shut down. So this is your updated map of that area, and then, from earlier at the beginning of May, that mooring area that closed, and it closed when I had no boats in the mooring area. So I made it pretty clear to DMF that I'm not going to close mooring areas until there are 20 boats in them. I think we deserve that flexibility. As a municipality that has more moorings in it than other municipalities of Commonwealth, we were one of the first to be audited when they went through this official change in the model ordinance, and we worked very diligently so that DMF could be in compliance. And so for that reason, I don't think I should be arbitrarily closing areas that don't need to close, which is the reason why the Katuitt Oyster Company mooring area is still open at this time. So effective tomorrow, we have the closure that comes into effect in the Katuitt Narrows, because that area from North Bay until that little flat that's across from the Narrows off of Oyster Harbors, where people like to go softshell clamming. There's 2 water quality sampling stations in that section of the Narrows. In recent years, they've failed enough times to warrant a change in their growing area classification. When I first started with the department, it was closed during the summer months, and then in 2013 went to being open year-round, and now is just, it's pooping on itself too much and has to be closed. This is what the blow-up of that looks like in Katuitt Bay. So you can kind of see there's a small section that goes into the Narrows. It's that sort of first half boardwalk dock after you pass by the seasonal one on the corner is where the closure starts. So we'll be posting that closure tomorrow because it's effective tomorrow. We have what most people are already familiar with if you harvest on the north side of town is the letter of authorization that was posted on the town's website from Division Marine Fisheries that allow wholesale transactions to occur at what we were calling the Grassy Knoll 110 Freezer Road. That's in effect through the end of the year, and if Division Marine Fisheries doesn't outright change their regulation to accommodate this as they go through regulatory change the end of this year, I will be requesting annual renewal in perpetuity until they get it straightened out, which should be easier than the last year of trying to get them to do it to begin with.
Amy, can I ask, how did it go, the transactions happening there?
They're amazing.
Yeah, okay.
It gets people out of Bush, down the streets to safely conduct transactions in a parking lot that's not full of humans and full of vehicles and trailers and people who may or may not have any idea how to launch or retrieve their vessels. You know, when you have very tight constraints around your time of harvest, time of ice, it's important that you get in and out quickly and efficiently. It's in the best interest of public health. And honestly, it's in the best interest in that parking lot of public safety. People, hit Memorial Day weekend like it was the 4th of July. It was insane. So those types of protections just help us be more Vibrio compliant and allow for safer transactions to occur. Here we have, this is from last month. So before what would have been the May 10th meeting, we had 1,028 resident permits, 358 non-resident permits, 794 resident senior, 30 non-resident veteran, and 66 non-resident veteran senior permits for a total of 2,276 permits, yielding $104,912. And then this is the updated information for this month, where you can see we've gone up a couple hundred of permits across the board with our year-to-date income for the year from just recreational permit sales, $121,114. So we're still just doing it as a year-to-date because we changed over and permits will now expire January 15th every year instead of March 1st. And so comparing the two, like last year to this year, still doesn't make any sense until we've been through this change for at least a year. I think that's probably all of the updates that I have at this time.
Where does that money
In the S account.
go? Is that for seed or what's?
The S account is a shellfish propagation account that was set up a number of years ago.
Yeah.
They can use it to purchase seed, they can use it to purchase gear, they can use it to pay for seasonal employees. Part of it pays for full-time employees. So that's what that money goes to.
Any other questions from the board or from the public? Hey, Jake.
How's it going?
Good.
Sorry, came a little late. The $100,000 that's discussed, is that from the S account or separate? It's from the general fund, right?
Yeah, so that $100,000 is specifically only allowed to be spent on actual animals.
So in addition to that, you could, if you wanted to, take more money out and spend it on seed from the S account.
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
not suggesting that, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, like the S account can be used for anything in the shellfish program, like boat maintenance, you need to buy a new trailer, you gotta buy like 200 racks, you need bags, etc. Pays for staff, whereas that $100,000 in the fusion fund is specifically only allowed to be spent on animals.
All right. Anybody from the public? No? Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
So new business, proposed changes to recreational shellfish fines for discussion? What you got? What you got?
Yeah, so the first thing are the fines. So I know we had discussed changes in recreational fines a number of years ago, and I think they got lost in the ether of the pandemic as it like just sort of pummeled down on everyone. Because I distinctly remember mentioning it, but can't find any actual like evidence of having presented anything. And they have to go to a separate hearing that then goes through a number of town council readings before approval versus the public hearings that are used for regular shellfish regulatory changes. So we were looking at changing our herring regulations, removing the wording on a closed day because there's a moratorium on the harvest of herring, so you can't harvest them any day, and making the fines a little steeper for those who are interested in poaching. Failure to remove fish caught, we wanted to make $100. Shellfishing without a valid permit, we wanted to make a $200 fine so that it's more expensive than buying a $140 non-resident permit. Just saying. Taking the shellfish during a closed season, we would like to be $100. It's a problem we run into constantly. We'd like it to have a little bit more teeth. Similarly, taking shellfish on the closed day. You know, since we transitioned to online permitting, even though people have to click a button saying that they're responsible for knowing the regulations, since we've moved to online permitting, the violations have skyrocketed, including finding someone with a diamondback terrapin hidden underneath a peck of their quahogs last Wednesday that they were going to bring home to cook and eat. Just to be clear, it is a federally threatened species, so that's an issue. So we'd like to make the fines a little bit steeper on that end, taking shellfish in excess of family weekly limits.
That is what they made.
Just in general, we don't issue special permits anymore. We're getting rid of taking scallops in excess of weekly family limit, because like if you can get a weekly limit of scallops in this town, it's like, kudos to you. It just, you know, taking scallops in other than designated area doesn't make any sense because you can fish them recreationally wherever is open to shellfishing. There's just the one commercial closure off of Calmus that's already written in as a commercial closure. So we were thinking of taking that fine right out. We were looking at keeping the commercial possession of more than 5% seed steady at $300, but actually backing off the recreational one a little bit. We have found that in magistrates' hearings, having someone be found responsible for having like 7% seed, even if it's their 10th offense, doesn't typically end up in them being held responsible to the tune of a $300 fine. So we're thinking a $100 fine is a little bit more reasonable for the violation. And then we also now have a regulation that gives us the ability to revoke a recreational permit based on frequency of offenses. So we think that monetary change is a little bit more in line with what the regulations currently are, and also having those citations stick. Because there's nothing more frustrating than, you know, writing the ticket that really writes itself, and then just because the person hasn't been a frequent offender or, you know, says I didn't know, just kind of getting off of it for a year, and then so long as they never misbehave again, then they're fine. Taking scallops without a well-defined annual growth rate, we'd like to make $75 instead of $25 because legitimately for every 1 bushel of legal scallops we see leave Barnstable Harbor, we confiscate and put back probably 12. There's a lot of scallops that are babies in Barnstable Harbor, but recreational people are not finding legal ones, and I've got an entire container full of what well-defined annual growth rings look like for educational purposes, but still doesn't stop people from trying to take seed. And we would like taking of shellfish from any shellfish grant to go from $100 to $300. So this is, you know, just for discussion purposes at this point in time. So if anyone has any questions about these proposed changes to the fines, let me know. Would like to put those because they require different hearings, potentially to a vote next month if nobody has any sort of, you know, contentious issue with anything that I'm proposing here.
Anybody from the committee?
Where does the money that you collect from fines, where does that end up? Does that just go in the general fund?
I'm assuming so. It doesn't go directly to our department. if that's what you're asking.
Is it paid to the Commonwealth or paid to the town?
Paid to the town, so they're ordinance violations. When we write state citations for like illegal vehicle use, hunting violations, freshwater fishing violations, that's state. But our local ordinance violations go back, I'm assuming, into the general fund because it doesn't get paid out directly to the department necessarily that issues the citation.
Gotcha.
You were talking about, I think it was a seed violation where it was 300, you want to make it 100, because they don't, why, they don't get charged the 300, or they?
We've just,
can't-
so I've been with the town issuing shellfish violations for upwards of 17 years. And when you write a seed violation with a $300 fine attached to it, and you're sitting there trying to explain to the magistrate that, they had in their basket, say, 55 quahogs, but 15 of them were short. It's an egregious violation to us, but it's hard to translate that into, into the responsibility for the violation.
If they have
So
seed,
if
it's
we
$100.
figure if we back that one actually off a little bit, that it'll be more likely to stick. And that people will have to actually be financially responsible for their violations.
But they could lose their license if you catch them 3 times?
It can be, so it depends. We had over the winter a number of verbal warnings and written warnings for various types of violations, but to one individual who I sent a letter stating, if we have one more issue with you, and I don't care what it is, I'm going to recommend revocation of your license. Haven't had an issue with them since.
Can that be for an extended period of time?
So I know like with commercial permits, you can't revoke them indefinitely. So like we've had people that were uninvited from the fishery before that then through the lottery were able to get their permits back. But recreationally, I've never revoked one. This is not, it's a relatively new regulation. I think it went into effect just this year or the year prior. So we haven't gone through that process yet. And there is an appeal process too for it. So if they don't agree with like what we've decided, then we can take it to the town manager.
Have you said there's a big spike because everything's online. Are you trying to address that so that the spike goes down? I mean, you're gonna do something with the online application that gets them to?
Management's idea was to, similar to the affidavit that you have to sign as a wild harvester, acknowledging that you will follow all of the CMRs, when you get a permit with the state. They wanted to include this kind of like, by clicking this box, you acknowledge your responsibility for knowledge of the regulations. So it really is like you're accepting that responsibility at the time that you purchase your permit because we're not physically giving you a book in hand anymore. I can't make people read them. I am looking into some like environmental justice type stuff to see if we can have our most frequently offended regulations translated into a couple of other languages. And then hopefully that can help bridge that gap.
Great. Anybody else from the committee? Public? Great, thank you, Amy.
So the other proposed regulation changes I have are just normal ones. And a number of years ago, only recently discovered by us last year, they changed the scientific name of razor clams. And so we're just recommending changes to any of our regulations that have the razor clam Latin name and just making it compliant. So that would be in those two regulations there. And actually I realize this is a typo, this is not going to be addressed. Initially we were thinking that destruction of shellfish habitat should be in like that section 1 where the fines are, and we decided to not go that way, so this piece of that is actually not being recommended to be changed.
So it stays as is?
Yep, exactly, which I will fix right now. So I'll send copies of this to everyone electronically now that we've discussed them, so you can look at them and sort of digest them, and then hopefully we can get a vote at least on the fine changes next month, so that way management can go through that process, and then we can hold off on all of the normal regulatory changes till we straighten out the discussions towards the end of this meeting.
Gotcha.
Figure out where we're gonna go with that.
That sounds good. Okay with the committee? Right. Thank you, Amy.
Yep.
Number 5 is upcoming renewal and transfer hearings. We've got a hearing for the renewal of aquaculture license citing 010 in Barnstable. Is she here?
No, because this already went to hearing.
May 11th.
Yeah, I specifically am trying to make these aquaculture transfer and renewal hearings after a Shellfish Committee meeting, but the caveat is that you have to have the meeting. So we didn't have a quorum on the 10th, so it went to hearing on the 11th.
Gotcha.
It was mentioned that there was no quorum, so it wasn't discussed, but ultimately we had no, issue with the renewal.
Your department does not have an issue with this renewal.
Nope, we did not, and the 30 days already has come and gone, so the new license has been created and sent to the town manager, who's
So
the
it's-
owner of Naked Oyster.
Okay. It's on the agenda. Does anybody have any committee member want to speak on this for any reason? No? Anybody from the public? Right. So the second one, also the same thing. This is for Ion Hayes.
Yep.
And your department had no issues?
We did not, no, Wayne's been in operation for a long time. He pays his dues, he submits his paperwork, he, follows the rules, runs a successful business, so didn't have any issue with the renewal for a period of 10 years since this was licensed
And
initially
that's
back
what
in
the
97.
regulations allow.
Yeah, up to 10, yeah. Only 5 for the first 5 years.
Anybody in the committee have any questions about this, even though the hearing's already happened? Anybody from the public? Good. And then, here's one that is coming up. This is license 007 from James Bright, excuse me. Is Mr. Bright here?
Yes, sir.
Great. So introduce yourself and tell us what the plan is.
So, I held a grant in Eastham for years, and then moved back to Barnstable, transferred this grant from Eric Hildreth. In 17, worked it pretty good for a few years, and, kind of bittersweet. I hate to give it up, but life is going in a different direction. Jack Bacigalupo came on with me before I got this grant. I was running Florence's grant, and Jack came on, and he had worked for Stephen Wright down in Chatham before that, and he's hungry. He knows how to do it. He wants to do it, and like I said, I hate to give it up, but my life's going in a different way, and he's wanting to do it, so.
Good for you, and good for Jack. I'm not gonna try and butcher your name.
It's all good, don't worry about that.
So what's your plan, Jack?
Grow some quality oysters.
Okay. Anybody from the committee want to ask either of these gentlemen a question about their wish to transfer? No? Anybody from the public? Amy, do we have any issues with the transfer order, the transfer E?
On my department's end?
Yes.
Nope.
Great. So, we don't approve the transfer, we just recommend that it be approved. So, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that the transfer from James Bright to Jack, I just say the last name again?
Bacigalupo.
Bacigalupo.
So, nice to have you.
It's a good one, Bacigalupo.
It means
By the
eat an
town.
oyster in Italian.
approve, motion that
We recommend.
Shellfish, recommend that we approve, the Shellfish Committee approves.
That the town approves it.
Oh, we recommend that the town approves, yeah.
Right. So it's been moved, seconded?
I'll second it.
Right, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good luck.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Number 6, proposed coastal projects. We've got a May 2 hearing and a June 6th hearing, and a June 6th hearing and a June 20 hearing. So 1, 2, and 3 have already happened. Is there anything that we should discuss about 1, 2, and 3?
Let me just remind my brain here. So the first one was actually already, the work was already done in November of 2022 under an emergency order for limited repair to an existing stone revetment off of 129 Sullivan Point Road, which is like near Rendezvous Lane access for anyone who recreationally shellfishes. So even when it went to hearing, the work had already been completed, so we really wouldn't have had anything to say about it. The 11 Marchant and 27 Marchant Avenue, which are both in Hyannis, Hyannis Port-ish area, was proposed revetment connection between existing adjacent structures and to replace the stairway and platform. All of the work as proposed was to take place above the mean high water mark, and all work was conducted via the upland, so no shellfish survey was required, and we didn't foresee any issues concerning shellfish habitat since all of the work was being done via the upland, so we didn't have any comments for that. Similarly, 79 7th Avenue in Hyannis Port was a proposed permanent elevated walkway and at-grade access steps, which really just went through the marsh up into like the upper reaches of like Halls Creek, where it grows like some of the largest blue crabs I've ever seen, but doesn't smell that great. So that all was just really through the marsh and wasn't going to have any effect on shellfish habitat, so we didn't have anything to say about that one. And although Liz has not been out to 183 Bay Street, it is to permit and maintain the expansion of an existing float. It's just putting in a larger float where already a float exists, so we don't envision any adverse impacts to the shellfish that are present, as Dave Ryan's survey showed.
So, Amy, I have a question. 183 Bay Street, you're looking at the water from Bay Street, is it on your right or left?
So I think 210 is on the right, maybe, and 200 is on the left.
It's two docks to the south of the Bay Street boat ramp.
2 docks. So it's not the brand new dock.
No, that was like 200.
The second dock.
200.
Isn't
So
that
that's been like for a while.
It's all brand new.
There's already one there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're changing the shape or configuration of the float.
of the float, yeah.
They do. Old business, I'm gonna move on unless you got anything else to say about that?
Nope.
Anybody have anything to say about that? Other than David? Status and repair of Skinner Lane. This is under old business.
There was a meeting held by DPW with some MEA management staff where they reviewed another revised set of plans. I was not in attendance at that meeting, but they had some comments from our department in terms of just remembering to stick to the, KISS model, keep it simple, stupid. And then they are planning on having, at some point that next spring public comment meeting, where they'll bring the next set of revised plans to the public for review. That meeting date has not been set, but at least there was, interdepartmental meeting in the interim, which had not happened since that first public comment meeting. And they did make some repairs, pavement-wise there, So it's not as dangerous. People still fly off of it, and, you know, remove some
That has a
plates off
question for you.
vehicles.
Theoretically, how long is this thing gonna drag on?
Theoretically, it can drag on for a long time.
Here?
I mean, I have stuff in herring run rehabilitation work that has been going on since before I was hired in 2006, so that's any indication of how long some things can take sometimes.
All for the town costs. Over. Period. That's ridiculous.
Who's overseeing it?
DPW,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
So maybe you go to Dan Santos, DPW?
You can try that, but Paul Graves is the contact for this in particular project.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Okay, last item, under old business, possible changes to aquaculture regulations, which is why I think everybody's here. So, continued discussion. Who would like to speak first? From the public? No, nobody.
Well, so I had made mention, you know, I had solicited for commentary from people in the industry and did receive a number of comments. And I had promised in full transparency that I would read the comments that I received into the record so everyone can digest them however they see fit. There were a couple of people who wanted to remain anonymous, there we go, yeah, that's not the right word. It's been a long day, sorry. Anonymous. Hi Amy, I was thinking item 4, and that was what I had put up online as topics that my department was more engaged in discussion. This is around untimely deaths. Thinking that it specifically written addresses members of a family. I'm pretty sure you and I discussed how the regs indicate that grants are heritable. I've made provisions in my will to leave my grant to someone. I think I may have even provided you with a copy of that for your use should I die. I did the same, leaving my gear and product to a few people. That being said, I'd ask that the language be written so that anyone inheriting a grant have the same rights. It's a rather personal and private matter, so I'd like to remain as anonymous as possible. So that was one comment. And then I got another comment in email that I don't think I have, to put up on screen. Hello Amy, my name is Pam Howard and I'm a resident of the town of Barnstable. I'm on the wait list for an aquaculture lease and have been following the Shellfish Committee meetings and discussions. Your participation and oversight of the entire process is most appreciated. I'm confident that the expertise, passion, and commitment to shellfish farming is within our resident population and share your goal of ensuring that regulations are equitable and in the best interest of the town of Barnstable. As I stated when I submitted my application at the Marine and Environmental Affairs Office, I'm saddened by the length of the aquaculture waitlist and would like to see increased opportunities for participation. We all share the goal of integrity in the process that will ensure the inclusion of residents managing and working leases within the available coastline. Thank you for your email, ongoing communications in support of our community. And then all of the rest of the comments are printed. Should anyone care to try to follow along, they're not necessarily in order of how they're going to be read on the screen today, because I just didn't have enough time to collate that. So these are comments submitted by Aaron Hemela. Thank you for taking a public comment on the recent Shellfish Committee meeting topic. My brother Jared and I have attended several meetings talking about aquaculture licenses. I'm sure you would understand that the most important issue for me and my family is to allow any Barnstable aquaculture license to be held by a Barnstable business entity. My dad started this business a long time ago. He was very involved with helping to pave this new industry. I'll say it's a little confusing at times because our business operates using 3 sites, each one held under one of our names for many reasons, including the continuity of business, financing, and personal risk. These licenses should be able to be held by a local business entity. A large percentage of the town's aquaculture sites are already held by local corporations. I'm concerned about the future of my business and my livelihood. I think that allowing this would be the right step to help us and to protect my family's business. The way our operation works, we don't have any interest in gaining any more acreage and would be open to instilling a cap on the amount allowed. Our business works well with the space we have, and that's why we want to protect it, and we'd be out of business if we lost it. You just want the licenses under our business name, Barnstable Sea Farm. Thank you, Erin and Jared Hemela.
So they bring up 2 points, which I think are common. One, they want them to be inheritable.
Which they are.
They already are.
So what's the other point that they bring up? The other point is that,
Removing the
want it
name
under
of
their
the
name.
individual
yeah,
from a license, which is where we always seem to have this continuing issue. Like I continue and my department continues to have no problem with having the business entity name on the license, but still are of the firm belief that the individual's name and potentially their position within that company also be named on the license, because we need a person to be responsible for the area in which they are farming.
Chairman,
yes, sir.
as you know, I've been missing from the commission for a while. We have some new people here. I don't know, personally, I have no idea what this is all about. And I'm wondering if you could spend a minute or two to give us a little background as to what the heck's going on here.
So I'll start and then I'll defer to Amy to finish. There are currently agriculture regulations in place, and they limit the number of acres that a person can lease from the town on the north side and on the north side and the south side. And so far, there are growers who have amassed plots of land that they lease properly through the town, and they put,
It's a loophole.
well, I'm not gonna say it's a loophole, family members or other business relatives or,
It's okay to do a loophole, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
no, I agree, it's just, it's a workaround.
Yeah.
Well, but you also have the 2 biggest operators in the town have licenses in corporate name.
Right, so that's a little bit, it's odd, to say the least. Odd because the regulations don't allow it.
Correct.
Those licenses were issued prior to the promulgation of those regulations, which I mentioned every single time we bring up that point.
Mhm.
Those licenses were issued initially in those corporate names prior to the promulgation of these regulations.
I'm not disputing that, I'm just saying that you have a situation where a majority, not a majority, but a large percentage of the acreage of the town of Barnstable is under corporate name. Right. And I don't think that's hurt anybody or caused any problems or anything like that. You basically say, you know, put restrictions on the acreage. Do whatever, you know, everything's in place. It's not like you don't have regulations. I mean, every single year you've got to comply to, you know, all the regulations and file reports and all that stuff, which is great as far as I'm concerned. All we're saying is, look, we've got all these sites. Why can't we just have them in a business name and have the manager of the business or the president or however you want to decide, be responsible? In other words, make him have to be a resident of the town of Barnstable. Put a limit on the acreage.
Yep.
You know, all the regulations are there, all the restrictions are already in place. But the way it is right now, I could go out and buy every single lease in the town of Barnstable and put it in somebody's name.
Yeah, I was going to disagree until you just added that phrase and put it in somebody else's name.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that.
So, you know, I mean,
I mean,
when I'm trying to.
buy me one.
That's the problem, that
Yeah.
everybody doesn't want that.
Well,
Other people
No, but
want
I
an opportunity
I can do that today. You can do it today. You can go out and buy every single grant.
Yeah, I like
in
it
town of
that way.
Barnstable.
I like it that, just the way it is.
Well, okay.
I like
so-
it, I'd go do it.
So then put the in other words, change the regulations, put restrictions in place to what it is today, or not.
No, it seems like it's a free market right now, we can just do
It's a
whatever
free
we want
market,
now,
no
so
question.
why wouldn't we do it? Why don't we keep it the way it is? Because if you wanna grow your business, it sounds like you have no limit on what you can do. So
Yeah, but don't you want me to have a limit?
No,
Oh, okay.
not under the rules we have right now. Absolutely not. Not under the rules we have right now, no. I think that if you wanna buy everybody out and put everybody's farm in somebody else's name and would require domicile under the rules we have now, that's fine with me because I know that that's gonna be a lot of money that you're gonna put into a lot of people's pockets, and eventually, like, the whole reason we're here is because you can't hang on to it in that format forever. It's impossible.
So to jump off of that point, what I like about the current rules are that a person has to be a resident. Corporation is an entity, it's amorphous. It's an LLC from Delaware, it's an LLC from New Hampshire.
Yeah.
It's, how are they accountable? We
Well,
said,
if you make the manager of the, whatever it is, a resident of the town, then he becomes responsible.
so, and I've heard that from you, I've heard it from others, and it makes, it looks like it makes sense. But that manager comes and goes.
Well, he's still gonna be a resident of the town.
And that's the only nexus to the town, is the manager in
Well, it is
your
now.
scenario.
It's the only nexus that it is now.
Well, the person who has the license, other than the people who were granted the licenses before the rules came into effect, person who holds the license has to be a resident of the town.
Yeah.
Whether they're under your umbrella, or DJ's umbrella, or somebody else's aquaculture umbrella. They have to be the holder of that license, and they have to be a resident of the town of Barnstable.
But can they be held responsible for issues that arise under the corporation's name?
Of course.
Well,
The manager, I'm not sure. I don't
Well,
know.
no, but I mean, the company, in other words, if, let's say XYZ has a 2-acre lot, and they never, put anything on their gear, they leave the gear out there, it goes all over the place, and Amy comes along and says, I can't take this anymore, we're taking the license away. That's the end of it. Whether it's
never
a corporate
happened.
license, or whether it's an individual.
I think I'm sorry I
license.
asked the question for an
so let
explanation.
me ask you this.
No, it's good, I'm glad you did, because
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot.
Yeah.
That's my first time. Because I'm listening and I'm thinking, what if, when you mention corporation, I think you think of an incorporated family. Well, what if it was Kraft or Monsanto, who was
Yeah.
gonna come in and buy all those licenses?
Yeah,
Would you feel the same way?
sure, because it's not gonna happen.
You
Well,
can't.
it's not gonna happen because it's happening. It's such a, this is like a tiny speck.
Pocket change for them, maybe it's just a hobby,
Whatever. All I'm saying is if you want an opportunity to grow your business, and if you wanna get into the business, or anybody else, anybody that's here, like Jack just is taking over. Now, maybe in 5 years, Jack wants another few acres.
Yeah.
Well, the way the regulations are right now, that he's competing against me if I happen to want more acreage and everybody else. Now, all I'm saying is, look,
He's
if you
hedging
think
his
some
bets.
big
He's hedging his
corporation
bets.
is gonna come in and take all the land, make it, put a limit on it. Put a limit on exactly what the acreage I have today. It's fine with me. I
But
don't
Who
care.
holds your grants?
that doesn't give me any comfort, because you set up XYZ Corp. And they max out their acreage, and then ABC Corp. Comes in and they max out theirs. And then who owns all the shares to ABC and XYZ Corp.? Kraft or Monsanto. So I can see where you're going.
I'm just picking a large industrial name that everybody recognizes.
Yeah, no, I
And I know you
understand
think
that.
it's funny, but I'm thinking, you've got to think about what you're doing today that's going to affect everybody here in the future. And you've got to consider scenarios that you may not have in front of you right now. And I think our ultimate goal is to protect people like people here at the table so that their businesses can grow but not get snuffed out by somebody else.
So you're gonna snuff my business out?
Why?
I think it's natural attrition.
Hmm?
It's natural attrition. It's the life cycle of
Oh, I see.
of the way it's set up.
All right. Sure. So if you have a 401K, and I come along and
I
say,
don't.
listen, I just want all the money, you can't have a 401K.
I don't even know what that is. I don't even care. It's not my business. It's not my department. Okay. But what I'm saying is, in this situation, you are only able to, and everybody that has a multi-acre farm or multi-thing, they're only able to do it by a loophole, which is not a bad term. It's actually, I love loopholes. They're legal and they're safe and they're a way to fix the system. So then you built this great business the entire time knowing this loophole, and now you reach the time in your life where you're like, well, shit, I gotta do something with this, or I'm gonna have to piece off this entire thing with the infrastructure and all the trays and the boats and all that. And I get that, and it's unfortunate, but I just think that that's just the life cycle of this business, and it's gonna protect young people that have a hard time taking root in this this community because of the high cost of living, the high cost of everything in here. And this is actually a very, like, you get into this business relatively for less than it takes to go to college and make more than you can getting out of college and live here in Barnstable.
Yeah.
And then exploit that same
And
loophole
so
to grow their
so I'm the one
business
that's
to the
gonna do
point
this
that you
for you?
are.
Am I gonna do this for you? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I'm a commercial fisherman. I'm not the aquaculture representative.
Well, then.
This is not what I'm.
You know,
I'm just looking out for the people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just looking at the people that I see on the water, and I look at all the helpers that work for all these companies that are my age or younger, that know. And some of them they don't know. They don't know the rules, but some of them do know these rules, and they're sitting there thinking that, wow, this guy's got, you know, his parents in this, with this name, in this farm, and over here, maybe if I just stick around and I really learn a thing or two, they're gonna have to look, they're gonna look around and say, who's left? I gotta put it in this guy's name. And that's how, I get you don't see it that way, but that's just how I see it.
I'm gonna take comments from the public. David's second, Les, you'll be third, and the gentleman with his hat backwards. Introduce yourself, please.
Corey Hendricks, shellfish farmer and wild fisherman, a Massachusetts maritime graduate.
Is that it?
Yeah. All right.
You had your hand up, I thought you wanted to make a comment.
You told me I was the fourth person to make a comment.
First, I'm sorry.
First, oh yeah, so no one spoke about the stakeholder, which is the people on that list. And one of the people who would be on that list, if I didn't get it passed down through basically someone was getting old, they didn't have a son to put in their name, so Dick Krause gave it to me. I didn't give him any money. I worked hard, and I got that grant because he appreciated me and everything I did for him in his business that his sons didn't want to do. And number 3 on the list is my mother, who we got on the list when I was 19 years old, when as a Wampanoag, I didn't even know about aquaculture, but I knew about shellfishing. I didn't know all this was going on out here. I didn't know what my buddies were doing out there. I wish I did. But we got on the list. We waited. My mom's 13 years in. She works every single day. And if you change the rules from what they are now, when these big guys, if they don't have someone who's next of kin or someone that they work with to, be like, all right, I'm going to transfer it to you, then it should go up to the people on the list. Because the people on the list now, for the last few years, have been paying $5 a year to be on the list. And in environmental law, you need to value every stakeholder. And everyone in this room keeps ignoring everyone on that list. And my mother is number 3 on that list, waited 13 years. And if I got another 2 acres, I would have followed all the rules. And between me, my father, and my mother, we have 6 acres, and we never ever had to change the rules or anything. We just worked hard. And that's where I'm coming from. And that's where Jake's coming from. There's a lot of kids that can't stay in this town, who have to move to Yarmouth, who are just trying to survive. And a lot of kids I grew up with who want to be oyster farmers, who want to work for me one day. And I'm in my backyard with my 70-year-old grandfather on like a grate, because I don't have enough money for a tumbler yet. But I'm coming up fast, and I know what I'm doing, and there's plenty of people. So if you guys who have all these acres can't find someone to put it to these big businesses to like be like, all right, you're a town resident, you're invested in town. My son, this one, that one doesn't want to take it over. I guess it's gonna go to you, you know. And that's the way it should be. If you're, it maybe, I mean, for the families who got kids that live out of town, maybe have a rule when if untimely death, you have 5 years or something to move back into the town and take over those plots and then put them into someone's name. But the people that you transfer in that situation should be someone who's on the list. And if all these people have people on the list that they want to run the grant one day, and that situation happens and they happen to not be next of kin, they can pick someone off the list that they trust that will continue their business. And in theory, with that, you could run your business forever if your legacy continues forever. Not just, like you're saying, an amorphous company that can never die, that can just trade managers and trade, and you can move people into the town. And that's the way I see it, is just like Jake's trying to say, is that it's an opportunity when these grants come up. And if you haven't passed it down, or your kids moved away and didn't want to be oyster farmers, that's not my problem. I waited 13 years to see my mom number 3 on that list. I would have been number 14. Or I mean, I would have been number 4. And so you guys all change all these rules, combine all that. I went to Mass Maritime. I worked for ARC. I ran the Master Wampanoag Tribe for 3 years. All I ever wanted was my own farm. So you're gonna take the opportunity away from everyone who's waited on that list? That's just straight unfair. And that's where I stand with it.
Thank you, Corey. David?
Yeah, Amy's read one letter. I know that there's a stack, and I think it's important that those get read into the record.
And I don't disagree, David.
And obviously my position is that I feel these family businesses that exist and that have developed over the past 15, 20 years, it's in the best interest of the town that those businesses are enabled to continue. And I think this licensing to a business entity is critical for that to happen.
Gotcha.
And it's in my letter.
My preference would be to have these letters attached to our minutes. Then they'll be the official record. Is that okay?
That's fine. Yep.
That'll save you having to read all of them.
Yeah, the only reason that I had offered to read them for full transparency is because this is a recorded meeting, and should anyone in future years decide to rebirth this conversation and not necessarily remember correctly what other people wrote, there would be an actual recording of such.
Wouldn't these be attached to our minutes?
They would be, yeah, which is fine. I'm just explaining to you why I had initially offered to read them.
Well, are the minutes available online?
Not immediately, I think, but I would defer to you.
Once they have been approved by the committee, that's when they get sent to be posted online.
Okay? So we just approved the April 12th minutes. These minutes will be presented.
I think I'd like to have them read.
Okay.
So
all of these.
There's too many, yeah, I do. Or do one a week, I don't know, one, 2 a meeting, whatever you want to do, but they should be read, because this is way too important to, there's a lot of lives here this is going to affect a lot of people, employees,
Yeah.
big, you know, lots of dollars in the town that is gonna affect it.
Amy, how many letters are here? 20?
There's one at the back from
We read
the.
one, so.
Unless you're next to speak.
Okay.
From
One thing that,
Reserve 14.
We went through a couple different stakeholders. I read through it real quick. There's one person on the list, and then there's a bunch of aquaculturists, and then there's Corey who just spoke. So if you want to do a couple aquaculturists, and then maybe a person from the list.
How's that? Good compromise?
Mm,
I'm not sure.
I
Or
could
you
just
could do
read them.
Mark, and you could do.
What's that?
I could just read them.
Anyone, you know,
Okay.
anyone is,
So, go ahead, Les.
okay, bottom line, the town has last word on who gets a grant. If Monsanto comes in and wants to buy me out, all the town has to do is say, no.
Yeah, but if the regulations are interpreted so that Monsanto can purchase it, and the town says no, it'll get flipped on appeal.
Yeah?
At this level, the regulations control, and, you know, you bring up Monsanto, I mean.
Put a sales limit on it. I mean, this, the
What do you mean sales?
thing is, they got so many limits on it today with the regulations.
What's a sales limit?
A sales limit, in other words, if it's a company that does more than $5 million a year or $10 million a year, pick a number.
But it's
then
none of
you
our
can't-
business.
Then it's too much.
I don't think it's any of our business what the sales of the company are.
I was just gonna say, well, I thought we're not, with leasing these, I thought we're not supposed to sell them anyways.
And you're right, it's not sold, it is leased. It's earth that belongs to the
Yeah, leased
Commonwealth.
by the town.
It's a natural resource for the town.
For the town, so they can be sold.
For the town
It's
residents.
for-
Town with,
That's the way they shouldn't be sold as a big group.
no, they're not sold. I mean, it's a
Right.
10, it's a 5-year lease. It's a
That's my
10-year.
concern, is they get sold, like you said, to a big company, as one big group, and then all these different names, they'll never come off the list if they're in one big group. If someone wants to retire, people pass away, people retire, that's how probably a lot of people have gotten these people have retired. Some people have passed away, that's how a lot of these have moved around.
And let's be clear, the regulations don't say this word, but they're sold by way of a transfer.
Yeah, they're sold.
I'd like to see the town get some benefit.
Hmm.
You know,
Why?
if they're transferred,
Why?
why?
Yeah.
Because the town loses.
Why does the town lose?
How does the town
The
lose?
town gains a lot. The town gains,
What is the game?
More production.
yeah, well,
$25 an
every
acre.
truck
per
road
year.
is, you got an excise tax the town receives.
Town doesn't get that, it goes to the Commonwealth.
They get the excise tax. They must get something
They
back.
probably get a piece of it. Yeah.
I mean, you're doing business in the town, the town of Barnstable is the leading shellfish oyster producer in the state of Massachusetts.
More so than Buffalo.
Why is it? Why do you suppose? Because there are more than several businesses that operate. 2 acres isn't gonna do it. 4 acres ain't gonna
Jay,
do it. This-
Oh, Stuart, I wasn't done, if you don't.
Oh, yeah.
oh, you're not done?
No, I'm not done.
You
You know me. Anyway, one of the reasons we want to do this is, in my family, we have 3 different sites to consolidate them as one business. The insurance, getting insurance, liability insurance for the product, for the grant, for the boats, for the property, it's a nightmare. If we get one insurance policy that covers all the sites that are under my company, or our company, God, it makes so much, make everything, life simpler, and make all the reporting simpler. It just, we're not trying to pull it out the rug from anybody or keep anybody from getting a grant. We just want to consolidate our business so we can have insurance that works. We have our reporting to the state and the town that works easily. I mean, there's no way you can break, when it's a family business, how do you break it down so each person, you know how much each person made or how many oysters each person grew?
That can
You
be
can't.
worked out. That can be worked out, but as far as, can you elaborate on the insurance thing, because
Well, if I have insurance on my boat,
Sure.
okay, how about the insurance on Jared's boat?
He gets his own insurance for his own boat, like every.
But how does that go into the
It
business?
has nothing to do with the names of the grants.
Oh, it does. It has
Why?
everything to do with it.
Why?
Because it's one business.
No.
It's a business
We're talking
that
about-
has insurance to protect ourselves and our customers.
It's a business expense for that business. Both boats are a business expense,
Yes, and all the vehicles,
but then they need to be owned by the business.
they are. Well, they can't be now because we're not allowed to do that.
Well, you're a wholesaler, so you can put it under that business.
Right, but the grants are in his name, the boats are in different people's names. Why can't we just consolidate into one business?
I think that's actually what we were talking about, that you should be able to do that, but that you would still have to have a minimal acres per person. In that, Amy was saying that you'd have, right, some sort of, or maybe it was Amy, that you'd have some sort of, your manager could have the name, or the business entity could have, I read in her letter, I think, or somewhere, that you could have the business entity control everything and we should talk about streamlining the paperwork and stuff like that, but what we're really talking about is the amount of grants per humans.
Oh, I don't think so. I think the main thing was, can we consolidate the grants and form a business, form a corporation, and have the corporation or LLC or whatever entity, partnership, whatever it is, control all the grants and do all the reporting and all the insurance and everything else from one entity rather than a bunch of them.
And I think like we can do it from one entity if that one entity, am I making this up in my head, like creates like, can cover every single grant under the domicile rules.
You lost me.
Am I making this up?
You're trying to say like individuals have each grant, but
I think I
a
might have.
subcategory of the business under one business as far as reporting and licensing goes.
Yeah, basically it'd be like, yeah, if you wanna have all your paperwork underneath one business.
It's a side issue. Let me bring up
I think like, maybe I read it from Mark's comments, was it you, did you say something like that?
It's been brought up.
It's been hard, yeah. It was an idea, it's not
Nothing
my
more to
idea.
say?
Yeah, I was thinking of like, I had an idea of like maybe a compromise to that where it's like, you still have to have the names and the acreage, but the guys that have multiple names, like kind of like when you get a transaction card for like the state, like have the business endorsed on the license. So like these three can have their business all on the same license on the paperwork, I guess is what they're saying, is because it doesn't all say the business and the name, but if it all said the business, but you guys all own the like part of it, so it said, wouldn't you be able to get your insurance, or basically what you're saying the issue is? Like that way it's, to me I see it's like, you have all these grants, and even if some of the people you're not related to, they can all work together, and then it also makes it more transparent. All right, this one holds the license, but this company actually produces the oysters. And then that company endorsement just basically reports on all the ones they're endorsed on, all the licenses they're endorsed on. It would basically be the same, like having both. But I guess the fail stop is that you have to have the name, not just the company. So and then if someone passed away, the company kind of has in limbo for a couple years until they figure out someone from the list or next of kin to keep that business. That way it's a little more of a compromise. That's just an idea I had, that would kind of do both.
So what if the corporate shareholders are the ones who hold the license?
That's the individual.
Right.
It doesn't gain anything.
What then?
Well,
What does that do?
in my mind, it gains, if I'm part of a corporation, I'm a shareholder of a corporation. that corporation that I'm a shareholder of, I have an interest in that corporation, I have an equity interest in that corporation. So everything is managed through that corporation, being a shareholder. That shareholder is, again, has to be a resident of the town of Barnstable. That person can only have 2 acres, north or south.
Well, here's the, I guess we gotta get, the problem is that the regulations today are 2 acres on the south side, 2 acres on the north side. A lot of the people here have a lot more than 2 acres.
Well,
Now,
have or they manage,
have or manage, call whatever you want.
okay?
So if you have, like in our case, okay, now, yesterday, we were selling, was it yesterday or today? Yeah, I think it was yesterday. We had 2 gentlemen come in to pick up seed that we sold. And they all came up to me, introduced themselves, and told me that their father would like to say hello. Because we've been doing business with these families for 30 years. Now they're coming to pick up seed every year, because we grow seed, we sell seed, we do a lot of stuff. We do a lot of things for not only the town of Barnstable, but for Wellfleet, for other towns. Now, you can't do all of this with 2 acres or 4 acres. You can't do it. I mean, we have a large facility, some of you have seen it. We've got, I don't know, 15 employees. We buy a lot of product from people in the town, from growers in the town. You know, they have too much stock, they want to get rid of it, they sell it to us, we market it. So there's a lot of benefits to not only the town, but to the growers of the town. A lot of benefits. Some of them keep boats, you know, at my place. So there's more to it than just, oh, the big corporation's gonna come in and take everything. Well, if you don't have any size, at some point, the town of Barnstable isn't gonna have an oyster business. You know, right now, we're number 1. We're number 1 for, the main reason is because most of the growers in the town are fairly substantial. I mean, they all have, 6 to 8 acres, and they do a lot of business, which is great. I think it's great for the town. It's good for the town.
What does vertical integration have anything to do with with the grants? Like you described, you described wholesaling and seed, but like how much of that has to do with the grants that you hold?
It has everything to do with it.
How? And how does buying surplus?
Because you have to have the size.
You have to have
the
farms to buy
volume.
oysters?
You have to have the volume, you have to have
No,
the
you don't.
infrastructure.
No.
You have to have the flub seed, you have to have the land, you have to have all of this stuff to be able to do all of
You
this.
don't.
Oh, really?
No.
Okay, fine, great.
You don't.
I thought you were a commercial fisherman.
I have a wholesale permit. I'm a commercial fisherman.
But you're not an aquaculturist.
Maybe a little bit. Maybe I dabble in that too. But the point is that you're describing other businesses that have nothing to do with the topic we're discussing. So just keep it to the farms and the acreage, instead of buying and selling seed and buying surplus oysters. That has literally nothing to do with the amount of acreage you have and how they're controlled. Doesn't.
So I'm gonna bring it back to Amy, you're gonna start reading?
Yep, is that the, yep. So yeah, DJ, I don't have the DG physically in writing, we just had that meeting that time where we took a picture.
No, I have
Oh, okay, yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so this is Mark Begley. Dear Amy, first thank you for your email of April 18 on topics of discussion. The DNR is open to further discussion, and the email's attached list of topics. Below are our comments following your list format. On your first listed topic, engage in discussion allowing for the name of a business, LLC, etc., and their position within that business, LLC, etc., to be added to the aquaculture license issued to the individual. While adding the licensed individual's position within a company to the license is a significant step in the right direction, we suggest it's too early to give up on the possibility of finding a mutually agreeable way to find wording that the town would feel comfortable without the license ultimately still being issued to only an individual. On the second listed topic, engage in discussion around a modest increase in maximum acreage issued to any individual on the north side of town. Clearly productive discussions around a reasonable increase in maximum acreage issued by the town is of utmost importance to many of the shellfish farmers working in Barnstable. On the third point, we believe discussion around experience and/or education requirements for new shellfish farmers is appropriate. On the fourth point, engaging in discussions to address untimely death situations, as in the Nantucket regulation example, makes sense too. On the fifth point, we suggest the fees discussion include not placing the shellfish farmers in Barnstable at an economic disadvantage to other Massachusetts shellfish farming communities while exploring better ways to support essential DNR oversight services. On the sixth point, streamlining of some of the reporting requirements should be an easy discussion. We wish we could have said all of the above points would be an easy discussion, but clearly they will not be quick or easy. DNR needs to continue to protect the resources. Shellfish farmers also have to protect the resources, as well as minimize unnecessary liability and the associated insurance costs to stay in business in Barnstable. Shellfish farms/business provide jobs and support the blue economy in Barnstable. Last year, Beach Point Shellfish LLC had 5 employees, all 5 were residents of Barnstable. Peer-reviewed research has shown aquaculture is good for the environment. Oyster considered to be one of the most sustainable forms of protein in the world. Oysters from Barnstable are considered one of the best on the East Coast. They taste great and they're good for you. These are just some of the reasons we need to have prioritized and detailed discussions ultimately on all of the listed points. As always, the devil will be in the details that need to be worked out. It has been too long since these hard issues have been jointly discussed with an aim of trying to reach a consensus. Bottom line, portions of the aquaculture regulations need to be updated. It's long overdue. Thanks again, Amy, for your willingness to listen to local business needs and your continued participation in these discussions that should lead to a more sustainable shellfish farming community in Barnstable. Sincerely, Mark Bagley and Linda Bagley, managers of Beach Point Shellfish LLC.
So, Amy, can you point to where Mark refers to items 1 through 6? Those are your points that you brought up, or are those?
So those were in response to what I had put up on the town's website. Initially, we put up what Al had brought forth in either the January or February Shellfish Committee meeting. They're still up online for people to make comments should they choose to. After having his comments, I took it back to the department. We loosely discussed the aggressiveness of the proposal and came up with points that we were willing to engage in further discussion, although we don't necessarily land exactly where he was promoting going in his initial proposal. So there are 2 separate proposals. Mark Bagley's comments were in response specifically to the points that I had put up online from my department.
Yeah. And they are not in this packet that you hand out today?
They're not. They were handed out to, I think I sent them to you electronically, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they came on.
Yeah, in an email, yeah. But I can certainly send them again, and they are posted on the Shellfish website.
Okay.
So these comments are from Cheryl Ryan by way of Dave's email. I'm aware of the discussions taking place about rule changes to the aquaculture regulations. As you're aware, my licensed site is managed by Dave and Cape Cod Oyster Company. Dave Ryan and Cape Cod Oyster Company are listed on my Mass DMF permit. Dave prepares and submits all paperwork related to my permit. I visit the site once or twice a year. If Dave is giving a tour as part of a fundraising effort, Dave and Al Serpernot are generous in their support of local groups, including but not limited to Cape Cod Hospital, VNA, and the Barnstable Land Trust. Dave chose this career many years ago. It's an extremely challenging business. Our family struggled with unsteady income for many years. As the business has grown, Cape Cod Oyster Company has created year-round employment for 14 people with a generous benefits package. I can assure you, Dave gets paid only after the employees are paid. Cape Cod Oyster Company has built a state-of-the-art facility that supports other area farmers by assisting them in processing and selling market oysters and supplying them with oyster seed. Cape Cod Oyster Company is still a very small business. I believe it's in the best interest of the town of Barnstable that Cape Cod Oyster Company continues after Dave and Alistair Bernard are no longer a part of the business. Transferring existing Ryan family aquaculture licenses to Cape Cod Oyster Company is crucial in the continuity of the business. I believe rule changes should be made to allow an aquaculture license to be held by a business entity. All other discussion points in your email from April 23rd are secondary to this important change. Thank you, Cheryl Ryan.
So that's kind of a common thread. It's having the license issued to the entity. Okay.
Just as an aside,
Yeah.
Cheryl pointed out, last year we raised $18,000 for the hospital was a couple of years ago, and last year was the
Land trust? The land trust?
it wasn't the land trust, it's that big, or we would have the old cars, the fancy cars.
Heritage?
Heritage. That was last year. We raised quite a bit of money by just doing tours. You know, we could pay $3.
Doing a big one for the land trust Friday.
What's your next one?
Corey Hendricks. Hi Amy, sorry for the last minute response. Here are my comments on the regulatory changes based on your 6 topics. I will be happy to read them at the meeting if that's easier for you. Apparently it is not, sir, but thank you for offering. 1, I am totally against a business holding the licenses. Many licenses are held by people who let a larger company manage them as is. This change would be detrimental to not only the price of oysters, but to the natural resources outside companies may be able to move in that do not have the town's best interest in mind. This would add another unwanted stakeholder, which would be big business. 2, I would suggest an increase to 4 acres. This is reasonable considering many licenses are held by multiple family ties. This would now allow a husband and wife to acquire 8 acres, which could earn up to $600K plus a year off. I believe this is plenty of land and profit. A family with 3 members could potentially run 12 acres. Any more than this is unfair to any list holders. I also believe new farms should be only open to list holders who do not currently hold a license in their name. 5, I believe the $250 increase should only apply to people who have had a license for 25 years or licenses that larger companies manage. It's unfair to a small farm like myself to add more cost to the daunting task of acquiring seed gear and paying Massachusetts fees on an LLC, $500 a year. After 25 years, or if a business is large enough to manage other areas, they should be the ones to pay an increased fee. These large companies only have to pay for LLC once but have multiple farms. As far as I know, those large companies do not have individual LLC for each license, which is a requirement in your first 5 years requiring a lease. I may be unclear on my understanding of that rule. 6, the paperwork should be able to be filled out by companies managing multiple licenses, but these companies should have to declare which licenses they manage and pay an extra fee for acreage not in household's name. Many largest companies are not utilizing the farm space they manage, and the license holders have little to nothing to do with said plots. These farms should be public knowledge of who's actually working farms, considering there's a lengthy wait list of taxpayers looking to get into this industry. Thank you for listening to my suggestions. I'm in full support of whatever DNR believes is fair. I just believe there should be more transparency on the larger farms who are constantly exchanging farms, managing other leases that are not seeded or do not have gear. Lack of business preparation or lack of knowledge to change gear to avoid erosion should not be the town's issue. Many people would solve these problems if they had to utilize farm space they already leased. Respectfully, Corey Hendricks, Duck Island Shellfish Company. These comments are from David Ryan. Hi Amy, thank you for inviting comments on recently proposed aquaculture regulation changes. I'm aware of all the discussions that have taken place by the Shellfish Committee since January 2023. I've attended or watched all Shellfish Committee meetings this year. Number one, in my opinion, the single most important issue that needs to be addressed and updated is to allow a Barnstable aquaculture license to be held by a Barnstable business entity. As part of the local blue economy, I've invested almost 30 years in building an aquaculture business. At this time, our business supports year-round employment for 14 young people with the equivalent of 4 additional full-time positions in part-time employment. We pay excellent benefits, and a good percentage of our employees are homeowners. Other small family businesses in town have done the same. According to landings data from the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries, Barnstable has become the leading oyster-producing town in Massachusetts in 4 out of the 5 past years. I firmly believe it's in the best long-term interest of the town to allow a business entity to hold an aquaculture license. As you know, the majority of acreage that we work on is licensed to the Cape Cod Oyster Company, Inc. There should be a mechanism in place that enables the 4 Ryan sites and 2 Supernaut sites at the Barnstable Harbor to be transferred to Cape Cod Oyster Company. Cape Cod Oyster Company would never try to acquire additional acreage to the sites that we currently work. We would agree to put this limitation in place with binding language in our permits upon transfer of the existing Ryan and Supernaut family sites. For many reasons, including but not limited to the continuity of business, financing, and personal risk, these licenses should be able to be held by a local business entity. The town of Barnstable already has a large percentage of its aquaculture sites held by local corporations. Opening this business format to additional licensed domiciled residents of Barnstable will support their businesses and ultimately the local economy. All other discussion points are secondary to this important change. Number 2, I understand the concern of DNR and a few other businesses controlling the majority of aquaculture sites in Barnstable Harbor. Limitations can be put in place to prevent this from happening by limiting total acreage held by one business. Number 3 and number 4, both are valid issues that can be addressed, but of much lesser importance than the licensing change addressed in number 1. Number 5, I don't understand how you came up with 3% cost of service and don't have any comment on it. People in the aquaculture industry have offered to have rate increase when licensed as a business. I would support a rate increase if I was able to have my business licensed as such. The $25 per acre rate is set by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as they recognize the myriad of benefits of having an active and productive aquaculture industry. Number 6, I'm glad you see the need to make annual reporting more efficient and remove the notary requirement. Cost of service for number 3 would go down as you would improve efficiency both on your end and the producers and compared to using the current forms. Aquaculture farms working on multiple sites should report the activity for the entire farm. In summary, the most important issue is allowing aquaculture licenses to be issued to a business if the license holder chooses to. Language in the rule change can include residency requirements related to the business being located in the town of Barnstable with a manager or executive being a domiciled resident. I should be able to transfer my license to Cape Cod Oyster Company if I so choose. Respectfully submitted, David Ryan, Director of Operations, Cape Cod Oyster Company.
Let me stop you there, Amy. David, I have a question for you. You've used this term twice in your letter. Barnstable business entity and then local business entity. What do you mean by Barnstable business entity?
So a business that's based in the town of Barnstable, with the CEO or president or whatever the title is, being a domiciled resident. So no difference between local business entity and Barnstable.
So same thing?
Same thing.
Okay,
Same thing.
thank you.
Yeah.
Corey?
What if the Barnstable business owns grants in another town like Falmouth? So they're not completely a Barnstable company. They have farms in Falmouth. So
if they meet a definition that's set out in a regulation, what does it matter if they have a grant in Falmouth or Wellfleet or?
because by all, either just the risk of transferring oysters from bay to bay, and also if you have farms in another town and you're running out of the same business, it's not a completely Barnstable town. It's not like a guy who has a bunch of anchors in Barnstable, he has his wholesale facility in Barnstable, and he sells Barnstable oysters. He's selling Falmouth oysters, other oysters. To me, it's not a Barnstable town if it has other farms from other towns. It's just already a big, for this small area, a big conglomerate oyster farm that has multiple farms in multiple places that all these towns have domicile rules, but they have farms in other places.
Gotcha.
That's, I don't know.
I appreciate the comments. I have to think that the transfer of those animals from Falmouth to Barnstable, or from town to town, is not a town of Barnstable issue, it's a Commonwealth issue. I would think, DMF issue. That's who regulate you guys.
For sure, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Oh, I'm not opining as to whether it does or
I
not.
know they've been around for 20 or 40 years, but my people have been fishing for over 3,000 years. In everywhere where you guys have grants, actually is traveling in. So I understand that there's rules, but sometimes these rules are being broken. Sometimes the seed's going from Barnstable to Katuitt. I know it's not supposed to go the other way around, but is it not going the other way around? Like, you know, so it's like, I don't know, even talking about all these issues when I think the town needs to like make sure like everyone's already in compliance before we're talking about changing rules.
Gotcha. Speaking of compliance, is there an aquaculture compliance officer dedicated?
Yeah,
And what is that person's name?
Caitlin Carpenter,
Okay. Is she seasonal?
nope,
Okay.
full-time staff. She's entering into her 3rd fiscal year.
Okay. Cool, thank you. What's the next one?
Kevin Flaherty. To Amy Carter, thank you for inviting comments on recently proposed aquaculture regulation changes. I'm aware of all of the discussions that have taken place by the Shellfish Committee since January 2023. Number one, I think the most important issue is allowing Barnstable aquaculture licenses to be held by a Barnstable business. I've spent over $200,000 in almost 15 years building my oyster farm. It's 2 sites for a total of 3 acres. Not being able to have the licenses held by a business has significant repercussions. It has limited my options for growth, opened me up to personal financial risk because my liability risk can't be firewalled and I can lose all my assets. It makes my business less attractive to a potential buyer. But it has repercussions for the entire community too. We happen to have conditions to grow world-class oysters, and for that business to thrive and buy services and pay taxes here in Barnstable, it shouldn't be hamstrung by this regulation. Given that many aquaculture licenses are already held by local corporations, it seems viable to make this change. Number two, I know the issue of increasing consolidation resulting in just a few businesses controlling most of the sites is an issue. I think it would be perfectly appropriate to have limits on total acreage to prevent this. Number 3 and number 4 are both valid issues that can be addressed, but of much lesser importance than licensing changes. Number 5, I don't understand with how you came up with the 3% cost of service. I should just make a note here. I did not run the cost of service analysis. I am not an accountant. There was a gentleman named Nathan Empey who worked for the town that ran numbers for NINA, actually at this point I think it was back in 2018 was the most updated. So requesting an updated cost of service analysis is absolutely something we can do. I'm just working off of the old numbers that had provided to us at that time. Number 5, I don't understand how you came up with a 3% cost of service and don't have any comment on it. People in the aquaculture industry have offered to have a rate increase when licensed as a business. I would support a rate increase if I was able to have my business licensed as such. The $25 per acre rate is set by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as they recognize the myriad of benefits of having an active, productive aquaculture industry. Sounds very familiar to something I just read. Number 6, I'm glad you see the need to make the annual reporting more efficient and remove the notary requirement. Aquaculture farms working on multiple sites should report the activity for the entire farm. In summary, the most important issue is allowing aquaculture licenses to be issued to a business if the license holder chooses to. Language in the rule change can include residency requirements related to business being located within the town of Barnstable with a manager or business representative being a domiciled resident. Regards, Kevin Flaherty.
So, did you look and see how many other towns in the Commonwealth allow for licenses to be owned by corporations?
Plymouth allows licenses to be issued to corporations, although to my knowledge they don't have any currently licensed to a corporation directly, or if they do, it's just the one. And Wellfleet did recently had discussions around licensing to a corporation and did not go that route. They hinged it on a commercial shellfish permit requirement that they've also added into their regulations, and that they could not issue the commercial permit directly to the corporation through the state. They issue them to individuals.
Yep.
So like you can't, as a wild harvester, go out and get a permit for like salmon neck oyster company or anything like that. It has to be issued to the individual, and they used that as part of the reasoning why. They have had some like borderline brawl situations in recent meetings over the topic. So it's not a topic
Over
that
this
is
topic.
unique to this town, is all I'm saying. But they did not elect to go that route. Their legal department verbally said no. I don't know that they have a written argument against it at this point. That was something that someone who I'm in touch with in Wellfleet had been, waiting on. Because the issues are so similar, I've been in contact with a couple of people on both sides of the fence in Wellfleet to try to get a more holistic understanding of what they're going through versus what we're going through here.
I was kind of involved a little bit in the discussion at Wellfleet. I went to some of those meetings. It was pertaining to ARC. They had a grant in the town, and because they were going to restructure some of the grants, one of them being the one that was in the ARC name, it triggered the whole another grant renewal process, which then kind of brought this topic up because they were going to actually just only move it a couple feet. And then so basically they actually had for a long time kept keeping somebody in the town for the domicile requirement, but then they hadn't had somebody in the town for the domicile requirement. So then there's actually a rule in the town that a corporation can do aquaculture in the town for scientific purposes, but in that rule it says that all the clams or all the shellfish from that scientific research has to be donated to the town propagation program, which never happened. So, yeah. And then turns out I think that they just, and then there are also a lot of people coming forward saying that they're growing on other people's farms, and the farm that they actually were growing on didn't have any product on it, and that all the activity that they had been doing in Wellfleet, despite having an aquaculture grant in the town, was conducted on other people's grants. And that's when I kind of got out of it. But, yeah.
Mark?
Just to follow up on your question to Amy, the last time I looked at their regulations online, they do allow corporations to have grants in Wellfleet, as does the state law allow corporations to have it.
Thank you.
So what I'm speaking to wasn't relative to the ARC stuff that went on last year. This is a member of the Wellfleet Select Board, Michael DeVasto, who also operates an aquaculture site in Wellfleet, wanting to transfer the site out of he and I think his wife's names into the name of the business. And although by regulation it is technically allowed, lengthy contentious discussion over months of Shellfish Committee meetings there resulted in it being a no due to this commercial permit requirement. He did send me, because we sit on the Shellfish Advisory panel together, what his suggestions were in writing, and I think, maybe depending on where these conversations go, some of that could be useful, but, I don't think we're there yet.
No.
Because we haven't even read all the comments.
I have a question about that, you're talking about the shellfish transaction card, it requires to have somebody's name on it?
No, so this is like your wild harvester permit. So you as a commercial shellfisherman get your commercial shellfish rod reel, all your endorsements, all of that is issued to your name.
But you can get that in a business name.
Okay?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, really?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that for the boat permit specific? Yeah, so that's specific to the boat permit.
So if you got a boat permit, which I have,
Yeah,
I could technically tell them that I want it to be.
have your shellfish endorsement on there, have all of your other endorsements on there.
Yes.
Cool.
Because I've worked on a surf plan boat too, that had Wellfleet shellfish on the permit.
We should probably let Mike know. that.
Yeah. Just hanging out in the wheelhouse.
So we have a number of other letters to go through. We have a half hour left, at 25 minutes left. You want me to keep reading and we'll just get as far as we get? Do you want to, what is your preference?
So my preference is to hold a discussion for next time. I'd like the committee to read these letters, finish reading some more letters next time as well. But I think we as a committee need to read these letters.
Absolutely.
So that we can have a better understanding. You know, this is the first time you've seen these letters. Paul, it may be the first time you've seen these letters as well.
Some of them.
Yeah.
I have one up there too, so.
So I think it's important that we come prepared for the next discussion.
I can send them to you electronically.
I think that would help us.
And I can also send them along with, I can include Al's initial proposal and post it online and then our topics so that we have all in
That
one
would be great.
spot.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Do you think it's appropriate to have the comments from those who didn't care to remain anonymous also posted to the web, or should we keep that internal to the people who are showing up at these meetings and to the Shellfish Committee members?
I think if you receive them as a comment, irrespective of the fact that they're anonymous, they should be posted.
Okay, so I'll do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
Okay.
bad.
Any other business before this committee, before we, or I seek a motion to adjourn? No? So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting of June 14th. And
Right.
Second.
All in favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.